Chapter 2, Subchapter 2, Immediate Preparations. Boys, absolute pain and anguish overwhelmed me. Thinking back to that moment after the call, I realize now just how much of a mess I was. First, I sat there in utter disbelief, unable to process what had just happened. Without thinking too much, I booked your flights. Immediately afterwards, fear set in. I was terrified. Terrified that you might get caught at the airport. I was panicking, running through irrational, stupid scenarios of how I could escape with you both. My thoughts were counterproductive. My stoic logic abandoned me. I was like a wounded animal, blindly trying to accomplish the bare minimum just to keep moving forward. Once the flights were arranged, and I finally fully accepted, that I wouldn't be leaving with you, a shred of logic began to return. I realized minors couldn't travel unaccompanied. Desperate, I called a contract carrier service to ensure that there would be no issues getting you through customs and immigration. I arranged for someone to accompany you all the way to France. Within an hour, it was confirmed, and I purchased an additional ticket for this person. I remembered thinking, if all goes smoothly, you will make it from the airport here in Shanghai to the same compound where I was raised so many years ago. That beautiful compound in southern France, my home since the age of 4. While waiting for the confirmation, I called the administrator of the Lee family compound. I thought for a moment that my call records were traceable, but as we always used WhatsApp, I felt that at least this part of my past was hidden. I gave her as many details as I dared to, and she said that she would arrange for someone to pick you up when you landed in Paris. She was deeply concerned, but there was little I could tell her. I simply said that there was a strong chance that I would never make it back to France, and that your fate would now rest in the hands of the family at the compound. It was a long conversation, touching on many subjects that had to be addressed. When that call ended, I immediately uploaded the remaining photos on my phone to the cloud. Then, as Ugong instructed, I swapped my phone for his. Turning it on, I realized I had become a digital ghost. This was not my phone, not my apps, not my contacts. I quickly set up my email accounts, but whatever my past life had been, it was now metaphorically swirling down the toilet. Afterwards, I felt the overwhelming urge to drink, to drown my pain in alcohol, to pass out and forget everything. But I couldn't afford that luxury. I needed to focus. I turned to the only coping mechanism I knew from my younger years. What I used to do when I was confused, angry, or hated myself enough to want to die. I found a sharp knife and began cutting the backs of my hands, leaving small, thin, deliberate lines. I also lit an incense stick, stabbing its burning tip into my arms and legs. The pain sharpened my senses. The anguish dulled slightly, but the hatred and frustration remained. That hatred became my fuel. Each slice, each burn, stoked my rage against the world. I needed that hatred to figure out my next steps. I knew I had to leave the house and get on the road as quickly as possible. I packed whatever I could, telling myself there was no room for more miscalculations. The thought that the police were already on their way loomed large in my mind. I convinced myself that you would only be safe if I assumed the absolute worst was just around every corner. Chinese surveillance was everywhere. Closed-circuit cameras in every street, every building, even in the basement car park. This was a true police state, and I knew they had my facial recognition data. Of course they did. Panicked, I put on a hat and dark glasses. In the moment, it felt like a logical choice. Now, as I write this chapter, it feels almost comical, like something out of a poorly written spy movie. My head felt like it was on fire. My thoughts scattered in every direction. Still, the one unbearable truth kept pulling me back. You were both leaving me. I wouldn't get the chance to raise you. I wouldn't get the chance to guide you. It was a pain so immense, but I had no time for this. It was counterproductive, so I reached for the knife again. This time I went a little deeper. I focused on what I needed to do. And from the pain, logic began to surface. Slowly, it pushed through the fog of anguish and drove me towards an idea, a terrifying concept that chilled me to my core. I racked my brain, desperately searching for another solution, any alternative that wouldn't involve such drastic measures. But every other path required me to trust someone with secret information, and I didn't have that person. Eve, she was gone. Your mother, she was gone too. I had no one, no time, no margin for error. I needed to focus. I needed to act. The tattoo shop near our home. I must have passed it 100 times. The sign had always been there in the corner of my vision, unremarkable and unimportant. But now it burned itself into my mind as the solution, the only option left. I went searching through the bathroom cabinet, my hands trembling, hoping to find sedatives. I knew I wouldn't be able to endure hearing your screams, and you would scream, I knew that. I am a monster. But I had no choice. This was bigger than me, bigger than either of you. The knowledge had to be passed down. It had to. Damo had been desperate to pass on his genes. I was desperate to pass on my knowledge. What a twisted, unrelenting circle our family has been caught in. Maybe my mother was right. Maybe we really are cursed. Footnote 6. My mother's father's name was Damien, or Damo. I only learned his name and his life story when I was 41 years old, and it will all be told in this book.